Hi, good morning, FIATech friends and FIATech members. I am Nicole Testa Boston, Deputy Director at FIATech, and I'm really glad you could all join us this morning. As most of you know, we've been featuring a series of 6 future casting series sessions this summer, and we're very proud and happy that Tim Mack, who's the president of the World Future Society, is joining us this morning and closing out our session. We will be making a copy of this presentation and audio recording available on our website in our media library at fiatech.org. We've also been archiving all of the past presentations as well. They're available in the media library. We also have a store. They're all complimentary at blip.tv, so we encourage you to take a look there. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Tim, unless Fran has joined us. Okay. Tim Mack is the president of the World Future Society, which is the largest member organization in the world focused on foresight and strategic planning. Founded 43 years ago, it has 25,000 members in 80 countries and publishes The Futurist magazine and several other hard copy and digital publications. Mr. Mack has been a member of the New York and District of Columbia bars since the 1970s and has served as general counsel for a number of for-profit and not-profit organizations. After holding research positions at the JFK School of Government at Harvard University and at the U.S. National Academy of Sciences, Tim Mack joined the Budget Policy Task Force at the U.S. General Accounting Office, which serves as the analytical arm of the U.S. Congress. He subsequently spent 5 years as a vice president at WPP, one of the largest management consulting and market communications companies in the world, and served on the board of the MIT Enterprise Forum, a nonprofit group assisting innovative companies. Mr. Mack worked with the U.S. GSA and the U.S. Department of Defense in developing strategic planning and change management strategies and assisted the Institute for Global Chinese Affairs, ranked #1 globally by the Foreign Experts Bureau in Beijing. Tim, we are very happy and pleased to have you here. Thank you for taking an hour to come share your thoughts with us, and let me turn it over to you now.
Well, I must say that it's a real honor to be doing work with FIATech because you're here for a day, your reputation precedes you. You guys do a great stuff, and I'm thrilled to be here. I'll talk about my presentation on the first slide because there's so little on it that it can run through. And the most important thing here, which is what I'll do all along, I won't read it, but I'll hit the high spot, is the email. And the reason I say it's the most important is, if you have any questions, because it's listen mode and you have to go through the moderator for questions, just contact me directly. And we're a nonprofit, and so our job is to get information that's useful about the future of how to do what's it up. So let's roll a little on. And let me talk about what we're going to try to do today. We just did the overview in our table best, or say it another way, how can you make the best out of it? So we're going to look a little bit about that. Identifying early signals and also highlighting, and I think it's very important, opportunities. So one of the things I want to make clear is that people do not look at the future, usually, unless they need to, because it's a lot of work. You have to do it well for it to be beneficial, and it usually takes extra work above and beyond your usual standard operating procedure. In other words, the idea that things are not going well is very critical to you. You're problem solving. You're trying to make things a little clearer for yourself, and also focusing a little bit more on strategic planning. And of course, that has been, in the 21st century, very common. The fields are not, I would say, as well controlled as they were, and that new factors that have come in are affecting your business or your organization. That the complexity of your environment has grown, and as well as the speed in which things change or new factors appear on the horizon. The whole idea of looking at the future is in quote intimidating concept, because the future is pretty much everything, and your organization and all the things that affect it. If you look at everything in that area, that's of course why we have divisions of and sectors of function. You know, that's why marketing doesn't try to do operations. That's why financial doesn't try to do strategic planning. It's often looked at in sectors because that's the goal to look at. However, if you're going to do future, you have to look in a broader focus, and that's why it's the sort of thing you don't do all the time, but you should do on a regular basis in a very focused and I would say effective way. And the big question is, how far ahead should you look? Too much is really much into the future, even though some people feel like it, because things are changing so fast. But certainly 2 years, and I think, in my mind, even though there are people that say otherwise, that 2 decades is probably as far as you could go out and still have the level of detail, the level of, defined range that you need to make real decisions. It is especially, as I say here, especially important to try to keep a lid on how efficient you get if you're just starting out. Experience really counts in doing foresight work, and you can get better and better at it. But, you can expect, just like any new endeavor, to make a few mistakes along the way. And the ideal is to learn from those mistakes and refine the process. I talked a little bit about how broadly to look. Did a piece for the government of Singapore, and essentially they started out, just as an example, looking security issues. And then, of course, with the economic crisis, they started to look at economic security. And now they're looking at the marketing areas, the human resource areas, and that's kind of how the whole process, the more you look, the more you interconnect all the factors that affect your future really are. Now, this is a very big question here, whether to go internal or external. Right? Is understand your company's future talked about the sectors a little bit ago, they really don't know what operations is doing. I can remember I did for a large beverage company, actually a beer company, a couple of decades ago, got themselves in a bit of trouble because somebody got a great contract for a whole new supply, but they hadn't paid any attention to the recycling of those cans because that wasn't their area of expertise. And so they had cans that they couldn't recycle, and of course, you look at in-house dynamics, one of my teachers are, if you're doing futures, who are you going to report to? Who are you going to deliver your results to? And what are they going to do with it? Those are all very important questions to get settled in. The whole business about product and service, life cycles, the whole business about the balance between, as I said, as an example, marketing and finance, the whole, in other words, how does those departments work together to be informed each other? And that's one of the things we'll talk about when we talk about scenario exercise. How you can get to know your company better. The whole question of what to look at in terms of trends is important, but it's easy to get stuff. You can certainly take all the trends you think are important and make a list of them. And then, as a second activity, go through, prioritize that list, and start on the ones that are the most critical in the shortest period of time. What I mean is, what's going to come up and affect your company next week, next month, as opposed to the stuff that might come up next year or next decade. And you work on the short term first, and then understand the long term. Here's one of the most complex areas, and actually, the example I have here, one of them is deductive. A lot of people really don't know how a new technology is going to affect their company, how a new technology is going to play out in the marketplace. In other words, will people like it? Will people buy it? And then, the whole economic piece, for example, how is the Obama healthcare plan really going to affect bottom line and overhead? So those kinds of, these are just examples, are the sort of things we look at in futures to try to figure out what cross impact on goals about tracking trends are tough in the sense that it is also, as I described earlier, an experiential business. The best people to talk about operations trends are people that have spent 10, 15 years in operations. They understand how things work, they know what to expect, and that's really what a trend is. But then when you start talking about how our customers are respond to trends, how does the competition respond to those trends, what opportunities are going to be created, what problems are going to be created, and what don't you know? That number 6 was the important part of it. You got to know what you don't know, or you'll be unhappy. Because sooner or later, that'll come up as possible. This one is very critical. It's really all this information to where your organization is going, where it wants to go. In other words, the critical question is, once you decide what the trends are, how are they going to affect any kind of initiatives that you decide on, and how successful you can implement that? This is pretty much
right now I don't have any questions. Fran, do you?
Okay. Did Fran make it?
Fran made it, but we can't seem to get him on audio. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, anyway. Hello, Fran, if you can hear me. Here we go. And if there are questions, don't be shy. There are a lot of tools. You know, let me tell you what my opinion of some of them are. This Delphi, the first one, is something you hear about a lot. It is rather expensive in the sense that experts like to talk and they like to get their opinions out, but sometimes they don't work for free, so there's an overhead there. There's also an overhead in getting them all organized, trying to, kind of collate all their opinions. Because Delphi is a very interactive process, and you do rounds where you say, okay, what does everybody think about so-and-so? And then you look at the results, and sometimes there will be a shift in the kind of the opinion of the group. And so, let's just say it's a labor-intensive process. Scenarios are more like the kind of thing you can do in-house, but it takes a little training and experience. Because you're really talking about your own operations and what you know about it, and then what could happen if this or that factor changes. This technology assessment, that usually takes some expertise, only because the technology development takes, what I would call a scientific background, especially if it's in the high science areas like nanotech, biotech, some of the developing areas that are still finding new ground. And then the whole idea of market acceptance. Let's go back to the tool I just mentioned. There are a lot of product benefits in those areas that are offset by, at least in the European Union, in some areas, a very high level of nervousness that we see about new technologies that people feel are not fully controlled. Like we saw Monsanto's Starcom, that was years ago, but it was a good example. Corn that people wouldn't use because they thought it was going to, cross-pollinate the other fields and change other farms' product line without their control. Now, cost impact analysis I talked a little bit about. The real important part of cost impact analysis is that you have to understand each of the areas you're looking at cost impact as well as how they affect each other. Identification and refining of relevant trends we talked a little bit about, but it is, as I said, a skill that grows, and it takes a knowledge of a wide range of factors and their interactions. The second one is the whole idea of understanding your organization. I think, not every organizational guru, so to speak, believes this, but I think you really need to have a basic working understanding of every function that the company has in order to be a good manager. You really need to know what marketing is doing, not only how marketing works, but what they're up to right now, and so on and so forth. In other words, you need to get a holistic view of the company in order to understand the company's future. This is, as I said before, it is a tradable function, and certainly you learn it from experience. A lot of these futures, especially scenario that we're going to talk about in a few minutes, is best learn doing it. Trying. You might bring in a facility point, but really, the smartest people in the room are the people who live the questions that you're trying to talk about every day. I've done these scenarios with groups like Department of Defense, where they were amazed at how much they knew that they hadn't really talked to each other about. And when they start cross-sharing, if you've got a room full of people from a different You could use them off the shelf without any training, but without any extra, what I would call sweat equity. And that's the big issue. There is some sweat equity involved in any kind of foresight work. And because it's above and beyond what you're usually doing, you're usually working very much in the present. You're usually working somewhat in the past. I guess benefit of working in the past is when you work with the commitment and the conviction that you're going to learn from the past. Learn from your past mistakes. Don't just focus on all the wonderful things you've done. For God's sake, pay all the attention you possibly can on what you've done wrong. I had an experience, some experience, a while back, working with the White House Council on Small Business, where we did a kind of future small business conference, and got that out to all the members of the FCA, so on and so forth. And then 5 years later, the same group of people did that and said, okay, let's look at all our predictions. But we were right about it. That's great. Congratulate ourselves. But also, wrong about it. And the most important thing is looking at why we were wrong. Understand what could we have done differently. So I really push the whole idea of accepting and learning from missteps. And if you hit a pothole, well then the most important thing is to make sure you don't hit any more of them. All right. Scenario. Ian Wilson, very active in our association, very smart guy. Went on to be this whole business. In fact, I'm going to read. What do you think I'm going to read? Most corporate cultures are still heavily biased towards quantitative analysis. In other words, production numbers. In other words, bottom line numbers. With the emphasis on precision to as many places as possible. Scenarios by contrast are primarily qualitative products. Let me tell you what I think that means. Qualitative means people. One of the most important things in your business is the people that run it, the people that plan it, the people that implement it, the people on the floor, the production areas, the operations areas, sales areas, and those qualitative issues, just as or more in making the quantitative, in other words, the bottom line numbers, actually positive. So that's why scenarios is, as I said, just to the end of that sentence, a story process. It's a story process for two reasons. One, people like stories. People remember stories. And people understand stories in a context. In other words, if you're saying, okay, if we do this, these things are going to happen. And you list it in this quantitative list of numbers, or this will go out so many percent, or that will go down so many percent, etc. People are going to often forget it. Obviously, the people in the comptroller is not. The CFOs are the numbers. But a lot of people don't think in terms of numbers. They think in terms of what does it mean to me? What does it mean to my department? What does it mean to the future of the company and the people who work there? They remember stories. Now, what scenarios is all about is it is a series of stories. What I mean by a series of stories is that they're based on a set of assumptions. The kind of standard piece is a sort of a matrix of full. What about if the worst thing happens that you could possibly think of? A war, for example. A depression instead of a recession. where the economy was working on all cylinders, there were plenty of workers, the competition was ineffective or unorganized, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, there are what is called, straight line projection scenario, which is what if everything that's happening today keeps on happening? What would that look like? If things get better, if things get worse, you have to take a look at what's happening today to figure that out. And then finally, I always like to throw in something that's called a wild card scenario. And what that really means is, what about something that nobody would think about? There are people who would say that a wild card scenario is such, but, there are more familiar ones. For example, there's a wild card scenario. We can look back at incredible changes in made politically, economically, just a whole range of how the world works changes from that one event. More regional area, Katrina down in New Orleans changed the whole region of the United States, shifted its economy, shifted its future, and for months at a time, kind of brought everything to a halt. And that's another part of that scenario. In a Katrina scenario, how do they change how we deal with environmental disasters? Because it was an environmental disaster. If you look at the whole shift of global warming into what is now called climate change, the 200-year storm is now expected to be occurring every 20 years. Or, the December hurricane, for example, unthought of or unheard of before. We haven't had one yet, but they're not outside of the realm of possibility anymore. Those kind of wild cards, even though they are very low probability, they are very high impact. And that's why we pay attention to them. The management development process, this really, the whole business about future is about trying to get more senior, middle, and even bottom-end operational sequence thinking about change. And if I don't know, you read Tom Friedman's book about the world is flat. The bottom level management is now, more and more involved in, or at least doing input for top level management decisions, and that they should be, because they bring operation and implementation expertise to the attention of senior managers, so they won't be making plans that really, as some people say, that really can't get there from here. There's plenty of stories. I could tell them offline, but I'm reluctant to point out specific companies that have done really interesting things. But like, for example, one, not by name, the aerospace industry decided, 20 years ago, decided to make themselves into a Japanese company. They copied all the Japanese innovation. And geez, this will be great. We'll end up just like them. Well, what they did, they made themselves into a huge mess. Because nobody wanted it to happen. From top to bottom, resisted it. And the senior management thought it was a good idea. That idea was done. And one of the things they didn't do is they didn't do scenarios about how it will be. So that point about scenarios is you kind of get a head up on apples. I think I used that before. That might be down the don't want to hit it 100 miles an hour. And of course, this is just it is the kind of thing futures is about. before you, as it says here, jump off the list.
Hey, Tim, I have a question here.
Absolutely.
This is Fran. Sorry, I had some problems getting into the vocal channel here. Anyway,
Well, you're here now.
What is your experience, I guess, in organizations, and first of all, trying to distinguish the difference between strategic planning versus future casting, and how they work together? And second of all, I guess, where in an organization does this position or this work best align? If you put it under a CFO, you may tend to look quantitatively too much. CMO, you start to get on a marketing band selling what you have versus what you could have or something. Sales and product development. There doesn't seem to be a right place. What have you seen the most successful in sort of beginning or creating a future casting sort of organization within a company?
Well, let me try the first one first. Let's get back to where I'm taking 2 seconds to look at the slideshow here. Oh, God, I just lost everything. So go ahead. Go to your screen while I scroll forward. So as far as strategic planning has historically had its own track. The planners have been off there. They've been working with senior management, but they haven't always, and if there are strategic planners, we're real pleased. We can meet afterwards and duke it out. But they haven't always been broadly involving of the whole company. In other words, one of their goals was not trying to get every section involved and get information and input from all the parts of the company about all the factors that affect strategic planning. They have their own language, and they tended to report either directly to a senior vice president or even at times to the CEO. Futures is a lot more what I would call eclectic, because it involves a lot of different groups, but it's also very inclusive, and that would be the distinction. Now, as far as where this should be, one, I don't think there's any right answer. It depends on the culture of the company, but ideally, it should be the office of the CEO. Now, I know how hard that is to get done sometimes, but the reason I say that is just as you described, Fran, the color of each department affects the focus. Like, for example, if you're in marketing, sometimes the people that are hired to do futures are really competitive intelligence specialists. So that's what they look at. They look at competitive intelligence. They don't look as much in the financial side. They don't look as much in the side. Of course, if it's an engineering firm and you're over in operations and you're really looking at the future of the technology, that's the kind of people you get hired, and that's the kind of information you get. So my advice, if there is, a way to do it, you put somebody in the CEO level and you get people who can actually talk these languages. If there's an issue in futures, it's translation. Because you're trying to get messages out and reports out in ways and in context that everybody will understand. In other words, how does that affect my department? How does it affect the things I care about? And it takes a CEO orientation to get that done. Now, the real problem, of course, is getting the CEO's attention, because he or she is up to their neck in alligators all the time. And it also takes a top-down commitment to the process from leadership that they will give some time to the results. And, ideally,
I think. Nicole, do you have any other questions?
No, I don't.
Tim, let me ask one other thing related to that same topic. Timelines. You talked about timelines there, and it seems like in the U.S. especially, we're almost based on quarterly time frames and short time frame scenarios. Whereas in Asia and internationally, they seem to be more adept at seeing generations ahead and planning ahead in longer time frames. What is it about, I guess, the U.S. market in particular and the U.S. thinking that makes us so focused on tomorrow or next week or next quarter as opposed to being in it for the long run?
I think it's the same thing that makes futures so important. The U.S. is an especially volatile market. Things change quickly. There are lots of players. It is probably one of the most complex and unpredictable markets in the world, in my mind. And therefore, there is an enormous pressure deep down to the detail, deep down to the short term. Don't make don't take risks on longer term plans that'll have to be rebuilt. Well, that is a safe way to go. That's what's called risk reduction, risk assessment, risk minimization. Unfortunately, it is also reduces your opportunity and the big win. And therefore, I think the focus ideally should not be on keeping your short-term, short-range view, but having, in fact, a flexible and responsive process. So as those changes come up, as those surprises come up in the marketplace, you can adjust. And so what you really, I want to call systems which are actually adjusted daily, not just monthly or quarterly, as far as strategic planning. Obviously, that's at the very, very micro level, but rethinking quarterly, at least the whole strategic plan is something I would recommend, even though it's labor intensive.
Thanks, Tim. Go ahead.
Okay. Let's see. Essentially, I've said this, but that you want people in the room that say things you don't expect in this process. In other words, you want to cultivate surprise in your planning and scenario process. It's getting from the world as a whole. That's the kind of that is coming in your face every day. Much better to, so to speak. In other words, the idea of having a flexible process should begin at the beginning of creating it. This whole idea of brainstorming first, and I'm sure everybody's familiar with it, but I'll say it again just to hear my voice. Brainstorming starts very, very wide. Everything that could possibly be relevant. And then you start prioritizing and focusing in. But at least you have a sense that you've covered the universe. You haven't left the top. It's too impossible. There are people who said that our present economic situation, a recession of this global was impossible because we had too many checks and balances. Well, obviously we didn't have to. We didn't have enough. Okay. And as it says, you look at uncertainty and then you look at impact. And the impact should be not just macro but micro. What does it really mean to the bottom line? And like, for example, the availability of resources. I've been talking to a number of people about STEM, which I'll talk to in a minute, but the idea of the availability of human resources. There's inductive versus deductive. The inductive is I and a lot of variations, and you do a lot of analysis. The deductive talks about, maybe 4 possibilities. Things are wonderful, things are the same, and something completely unexpected happens. Like the most deductive process. You look through all your factors and thinking about where do I want to put my resources and my thoughts. What do we want to focus on? And that really can be emphasized enough. You want to be as ambitious as possible at the beginning of the process of foresight, and you want to be as disciplined as possible at the end. You really want to pick out the number of factors you can work with to make it different. And at the beginning, I'm going to repeat that. Making a difference can be mitigation, or it's going to be a attack. This is going to happen no matter what. That's how you're going to write out that. And as you build these stories, remember, as I said, that they're stories, because one of your big challenges, once you do the analysis and you come to conclusion, the communication, trying to get senior management to understand what it is that you've learned over the course of how many years we're into it, that you can have them understand what they should do. And giving good titles, I did some examples of making the story interesting to read and easy to understand, all very important. It doesn't have to be, a bestseller, but it has to do its job. And its job is education. Now, let's talk a little bit about teaching the process. I think I just talked about figuring out what issues are the most critical and focusing on them as you go forward. Make it simple. You can get too creative. It has to be interesting, but it has to be manageable. And in fact, there's something that's unsaid in the team interactivity, which is if you've got all these sectors and they're representative and they have input, it's important that that input is relatively well balanced, because then when you go back and try to implement some of these recommendations that come out of this process, everybody has to be on board or there'll be obstacles. I mean, it usually is the case that if people don't understand how they benefit, then they're usually not as supportive of the change as they might be. And this whole business about preparing in advance, that's really a staff as opposed to a scenario team function. You want them to come in the door having read as much of the relevant material on the question that you're addressing. Now, what I would say, especially when you get started, that you really shouldn't be looking at, well, what's the future of the company going to be for 10, 20 years? You should be looking at what's the future of the company in. Like, for example, if you're a nanotechnology company, there's going on in nanotechnology. You look at one specific manageable area, because I will tell you, you will find conditions as you go forward. You keep it simple from the beginning, and you make it nice. But in the middle, it'll be, it'll seem unmanageable. But it will not be by the time you're done. It all comes together. Looking backwards, we talked about learning from history. We talked about learning from mistakes. And I stand by that. I think that's an important process. Understanding competition. If you don't have competitive intelligence teams, you probably should have. They don't always run a foresight process because they usually focus on a narrower region but they're very, very important. The whole business of competitors, and then remember I said start with looking at your own company, but as you get better at this, you've got to look at what competitors are doing, and the best way to second guess them is to understand them. I'm kind of flipping through this to the line. Make it creative. Don't order the scenarios early. Keep them open. To the end, you've got to have priority. You want to go large at the beginning, and you probably should never be completely fine, because that's really the job of the improvement stage or this part of the process. Be creative, entertaining, just so you can understand at a glance what each is about. If you're doing a scenario, and operational implications are very important. Will this work? And if not, and if it's exhaustive, so if it's enjoyable, you won't get through it. The first one is the most important. Has to be on the board. They have, because none of this gets done without that support. You might have a good time doing it, but if it doesn't mean anything for the direction of the company, you've wasted the resources of your organization. And there we go. I lost me. If you get right around, you really start to run into the not my backyard problem, which is people will resist change, especially if they were not involved in making the decisions for change. And the fact that line staff and management staff are not interactively involved usually is a problem. Unrealistic expectations. This is not a magic process. It only works because of the things you already know that work. If you can't come up with a practical implementation strategy, you probably better go on to another recommendation. And also, it's not just what to do, but who's going to do it, and what resources are they going to use. That's critical. Let's see. Don't get too fancy, too many scenarios. Take forward your Mack, myself. You need to bring planning in, even though that's separate function. Strategic planning. Let's see. Signpost first. That's what I talked about a flexible and evolutionary process. Once you make recommendations, you have to keep an eye out not only for how they implement it, but also what changes in your environment, the environment the company's working in, are coming down the pipe. New things that you might have first done. Friends, I've already talked about the internal inconsistencies. You want to make sure that each of these scenarios is getting kind of the same universe, not an imaginative one. And you want the stories to get people's attention. Education, I talked about this again and again, and the education of management on the foresight is not an easy thing, because, as I said, it's above and beyond standard operations, and it's something that takes time. And sometimes it's just in myself. I hate to say that, but we found that over time, the big changes are not necessarily, of course, will get me in trouble, not necessarily educational but generational. Like, for example, the ability to use IT, the ability to use 2.0 tools in marketing, for web marketing. Some of that has been clearly generational. Younger people can do it easier.
direction and I guess reporting on that. How broad and how deep in the organization do you publish that? Because oftentimes strategic planning is held at a very high level. Is future work also have that similar, or is it better to disperse it throughout the organization to get a total mindset?
I think that should be guided by sector management. In other words, you should get, because the reason they say that it should be guided by the individual sectors is because there's a lot of inflation involved. If you do, like for example, I was involved in what was called the Atlantic Way before they became a Verizon, and they tried a top-down, we're going to change the culture of the company process, and and it was one size fits all, and that was pretty tough. And in fact, they had a lot of pushback on it. And so I think the first thing to get done is to get top management aboard to make a direction, and then to start bringing in the stakeholders that will be involved and get them to help make it relevant and appealing to their various groups. So I don't think you widely distribute to begin with. That's my thought.
Okay, great.
Let me say that pushback is inevitable. That you'll always have some group that don't want change or that sees change as a threat. It's psychological. I could go on for another hour on all the nuances of that, why it occurs, but I would just accept that no matter what you do, as far as innovation, not everybody will see it as innovation. And building consensus is critical. Okay. This is an opportunity. That's really what it's all about. You understand the risks and the opportunity, you are on the way. Simulation, I think everybody in this audience understands simulation. I drew this in as an example of how you look at one issue or another as a, what's going to happen and what can we do about it. Here we go. What you've been waiting for, the conclusion. You should know more about your assumptions. You should look at the very beginning to see what it is that you are all completely sure is going to happen, and then try to figure out whether you're wrong or you're right. That's how the process should work. Second, the process should work in a way that whatever you decide today, you'll have to rethink tomorrow, and that should be it. I thought we had that problem solved. That kind of mindset is only going to cause you trouble because you spend too much time in recrimination and blame casting and too little time in okay, this is new, what do we do now? In other words, looking ahead. If you look behind, it's going to kill you. If you look ahead, it's going to be a winning strategy. Flexibility and change circumstances is the way I put it. The more flexible the organization, the more successful it will be in turbulent times of change, and boy, these are them, as they say. Hey, guess what? I can say it one time. Who was the thought? Any more questions?
I do, Tim. I just have one question. This person wants to know what your take is on how businesses may plan for innovation.
I think that that is a tough question, because when I'm going to backpedal on that, the first thing you want to know is what do they do now? The second thing you want to know is what areas are they looking to innovate in, because their plans are usually quite different for areas like nanotech than, for example, in the mattress business. We did this in Chicago on innovation. We've done a lot of work with companies trying to build culture. In other words, the three things that are critical in an innovation culture is that mistakes were made, and in fact, let's be the right word, encourage as a sense of learning. It's better to get it wrong than right, but everybody wants to say this is an opportunity to change for the better. So that kind of mindset. Two, top to bottom interactivity. The companies that have opened up their, not necessarily decision process, but at least their information process from top to bottom, and have decentralized what used to be called the head shed, the large monolithic management complexes that really didn't listen to anyone but themselves. That's, I guess, the second part of innovation. And the third is innovation can come from anywhere. A lot of companies are now doing outsourced R&D. They're using resources, including not-for-profit resources, partnerships with universities, overseas. It used to be that it was everything was global, but now it's global partnership. And so the willingness to work with people that you formerly saw as competitors in ways that make sense. Obviously, competition is still a very important part of the business. Those three things, I think, would be the most critical in creating what I would call an environment that's very friendly to innovation. Do you think that was even remotely an answer to your question?
I think that was great. Thanks, Tim. And I did have one more come in. A futurist said in 2001 that the greatest threat to U.S. security was from a nuclear Korea. Were they wrong, or did they play the wrong scenario?
Well, obviously, they meant a nuclear North Korea. We haven't seen a lot of secrecy gestures from what I would call our dear friends. I just came back from there yesterday. Our dear friends in South Korea, they were very friendly. But no, I think that we continue to see, especially an autocratic country like North Korea, which is much different than a bureaucratic country like Russia, in the sense that you have a single leader, regardless of his personality, his will is law, and he could make the wrong decision in a moment. And the most nerve-wracking part of that is that his leadership, his regime change moment, when he died, when he retired, nobody knows what that's going to be like because it's not clear if anybody can take his place. And in a situation where a country does have nuclear capability, and regardless of what they say, I believe that they do or will, that, I think that is, for that particular scenario, it's played out a little slower than we thought. But, no, that's still an area of great.
All right. Thank you very much, Tim. And Fran, let me just hand it over to you to close out.
Okay, great. Tim, thank you. By the way, I would suggest if people are interested in some of the topics that we had here for the last 6 series, that they actually, this is a great place to end, consider following up with Tim, joining the World Future Society organization. You get, individual memberships at a very cheap price and follow different scenarios and future predictions that are often posted in the newsletter and all. And I would also encourage you to consider the conference that is coming up next year in 2010, which has a very appropriate theme, I think, for most of us. It's centered around sustainability. Is that right, Tim?
That's correct. It is in Boston in July next year, and the website is www.wfs.org. And then we also have company leadership in chamber.
Edge here in the last six-pack series of topics that we had related to future casting, and looking ahead, we're planning another sort of series like this, and once we rally up those people, we'll be posting something and alerting everybody. So watch on the LinkedIn website and also on the FIATech website, and we'll be sending out information on that shortly. So Tim, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And Nicole, thank you for organizing this great series here. It's no small effort, and hopefully our audience appreciates the work that goes into what may seem like simple logistics, like turning on a radio and listening, but requires lots of planning and prep and finding and talking to the right speakers, and we thank you for that. With that, that's for now. Thank you, Tim.